Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video review of the iRULU eXpro X1S. This is a 10.1-inch display Android tablet, which has Android version 5.1 Lollipop pre-installed and sells on Amazon for about $100, which is fairly inexpensive, so it competes with other low-end Android tablets on the market, perhaps by RCA. Otherwise, in terms of specs, it remains also kind of competitive for this price point. For instance, there is a quad-core 1.3 GHz MediaTek processor along with 1 GB of DDR3 RAM. There's also the addition of 8 GB of built-in flash storage, which is expandable via a micro SD card slot. The screen itself isn't that impressive, however. It has a 1024 by 600 resolution, so that's not the best PPI in the world, although for some basic web browsing and reading a few comics, as well as watching YouTube videos, it will suffice. It comes in a few different colors. We have the white version here, and one of the reasons why the X1S is a decent value to consider is because of the contents that you get. So the box itself looks like this. It takes about 5 to 7 days to arrive, and inside there's access to a DC wall charger, which uses an interesting proprietary plug, but you can also use micro USB to charge it. It includes this cable as well for syncing data with the computer. There's also a user guide in the packaging, along with a case, which you get. The one that we got was pink, but you can also choose the color from green to blue, so you can customize it. It's not a Bluetooth case, but on the inside you have access to a pretty generous keyboard, allows you to type and, I guess, write some emails, do some productivity faster than an on-screen keyboard would deliver. There's also some indication lights for the actual caps lock and backspace, so on and so forth. The most interesting thing about this case is it uses a micro USB connector, and that means that the X1S does have OTG support, so you can plug in an adapter and then use it for reading some thumb drives, maybe even hard drives, which is quite versatile, despite the fact it doesn't have a full-sized USB port right out of the box. And the tablet just slides right on top. It also means that the case isn't using Bluetooth, but also has a kickstand on the back for propping it up for watching some videos. Taking a closer look at the design of the tablet next, it is made entirely out of plastic, so it does feel a little bit cheap. However, I will say that it is quite solid in the sense that there are no creaking or cringing when you're holding it. You can find stereo speakers located on the back, which when you're holding it seems to do fine. It doesn't get muffled up. It is a fingerprint magnet, so it will attract a fair amount of smudges after you start using it. You have access to a rather low 2 megapixel rear-facing camera, but I guess decent for some emergency shots, and the front also has a 0.3 megapixel, basically a VGA resolution camera for Skype. It does okay in brighter environments. The bezels seem reasonable, and they exist just to allow you to grip the tablet a bit more easily without actually touching the screen. And taking a look at some of the ports on the unit, they're all basically on the right-hand spine. They have access to a power on-off switch, pretty tactile and responsive. There's also a volume rocker on the sides, micro USB, proprietary charging port, 3.5mm headphone port, micro SD card slot for expansion, and some microphone ports for recording sound and for Skype calls. So turning the unit on, you can see that the display itself is reasonable, even though that the viewing angles are not the best. If you start tilting the screen, you can see that colors and saturation does start to decrease dramatically. With that being said, it still is fairly bright, so under indoor environments, in moderate lighting, you can still see what's going on with the display. Overall, it looks like a pretty classy, I would say, tablet. Definitely seems to be more expensive than the $100 price tag would indicate. So a decent choice, not all in all. Checking out the camera first, you can see that we have the app opened up, and again, images can be captured, but they are not the most in focus. It is a fixed focus camera, and also colors are a little bit more washed out, but again, they will do for an emergency shot or two. You have access to some fairly standard settings for changing things like the grid, for aligning your photo, for a self timer, swapping the secondary camera back and forth, recording video, so on and so forth. And to go back home, you have access to virtual controls down below, which takes up a bit of the screen real estate. This dubs as a home key, there's a back key, this one for multitasking, opening up all your currently open applications, and there's also a dedicated controls for the volume if you don't want to use the volume rocker. So this is something to quickly note. As you can see here, we have quite a few applications open right now, and it still works pretty well. So I would say that all in all, even though it's not the fastest tablet in the world, it does handle multitasking reasonably well, as long as you're not, opening up a ton of 3D games and web pages and plan on doing some heavy multitasking. It still does the job for some, again, light web browsing and some basic apps. So overall, not terrible for a quad-core processor. Going into settings, we can check out a few other details about the X1S, also branded as the X11 in some countries. Things like data usage, the display, storage can be turned on or off. There's also the ability for you to go through and create separate profiles for guests to use the tablet, so it removes or at least blocks some of the apps that you've downloaded. There's also things for language, input, printing, and if we tap on About Tablet, we can see things like the processor, and more importantly, the Android version, which is indeed Lollipop that has been pre-installed. As far as app overall performance, I would say it's also pretty decent, as long as you're not installing too many apps, because again, the memory is a little bit limited at 8 gigs built in. Some of that will be used up by the installation for the operating system. It still should be fine, better than 2 gigs or 4 gigs, which we saw a few years ago for more budget-oriented tablets, so not bad at all. The notification drawer on the top is pretty standard, so overall this build is quite vanilla, allows you to customize the tablet as you want, which is a plus here. It also doesn't have too much bloatware pre-installed, which is something we also like. With that being said, again, the touchscreen isn't the most responsive in the world, even though it is capacitive, does support multi-touch. You'll notice that some things take a few times to respond. There is the addition of GPS on board if you want to use it for navigation, although it's quite large for that. There is also the addition of Bluetooth, which allows you to use wireless speakers for listening to music and watching videos when on the go. That's a nice plus. We have seen a few models omit Bluetooth before, so nice to have it here. There's also Wi-Fi, of course, so you can change those settings on the very top here along with the screen brightness. So next we're going to take a quick look again at some of the apps on here. A very, again, vanilla install of Android, so nothing too surprising or shocking. There is a drawer on the bottom for your Google service-related apps, inclusive of Google Search, YouTube, Hangouts, Google Drive, or cloud storage. Chrome is pre-installed for web browsing. I do prefer this to the stock or the native browser on the very top there. There's also Play Music for listening to streaming content, play videos, movies, and also Google Maps. Everything else from the clocks to the calendar is basically standard, so again, nothing really to write home about. If you used an Android phone before, I think you'll be right at home here, and again, you can customize the different pages with your favorite applications, widgets, as well as wallpapers. In terms of the universal app drawer, you can see that there is one app that iRULU has put on here. It's basically just a link to their website. It allows you to check out things like the warranty as well as your device, and it's a very basic install of an app, I would say. Nothing else really too crippling, and everything else is really up to you. You can go to the Play Store and download your favorite games, ebook reading apps, utilities to your will. So checking out the Chrome web browsing experience next, it's a fairly lucid and responsive overall finish. You can have tab browsing, opening up multiple pages really isn't an issue, and bringing up the keyboard here, it is a pretty comfortable experience just because the screen is 10.1 inches. It's a widescreen 16:9 aspect ratio, so it is decent for, again, watching videos as well as typing, inputting text. You can change different languages as well, so right now we're in English. Let's check out the New York Times. So this is a good benchmark because it is a fairly complex page to load with a ton of elements such as videos, flash elements, interactive elements. So if this can handle that, then it can handle most pages without really too many issues. You can also go to youtube.com directly from the browser and stream content, so it's a nice plus here. So you can see here we're connected using Wi-Fi, and it seems to be quite fast. The page seems to be loaded more or less. Some elements are still loading in the background, but we have videos which have been loaded. There are images that have been loaded, interactive elements that you can drag around, which are also starting to load. So a pretty good web browsing experience all in all, I'd say. It's easy to take with you, and the full desktop page is loaded by default, which I like to see. You can also change the screen orientation quite easily, so it makes for a nice portal for interacting with the web, checking out emails, watching videos, reading ebooks and comics when on the go. So going back into the home screen here, we're going to check out the speaker quality, and again, maybe give you guys a quick demo of the video experience on here for watching a clip. We're going to go to OS reviews, and load up a video that we find there. Something I want to quickly point out right now is that the X1S does not have a HDMI port, but neither does a lot of the budget-oriented competitors we've seen out of Shenzhen, China. So there isn't really a great way to connect it using wires onto an external monitor or onto a television, but you could always use Wi-Fi, use the Miracast function built on in to wirelessly connect it. But you do need to have, let's say, a Chromecast or a smart TV to do that. So let's tap on the first video that we can see here. You can see that the loading times are quite fast. You have access to a very desktop-esque experience with your comments and videos on the left-hand edge. You can check out the description box down below, and then the full video loads up quite well. It buffers well. You can also stream and scrub the video, and it loads up nicely as well. So overall, a pretty good video watching experience despite the fact it's not in, let's say, 1080p or 2K resolution, but it still loads it very well. One of the benefits of having a slightly lower resolution display is the battery life. It has a 5,500 milliamp hour capacity battery, which lasts for over 6 hours in our testing, which is quite impressive for a tablet, especially for a full-size, 10-inch tablet. So all in all, again, this is a pretty nice option, I would say, if you're on a budget and you still want a tablet to tote around for watching videos, doing some web browsing. So I was not expecting the fastest, the most lucid, top-of-the-line experience in the world. I think that overall you will be pleased with what you see here. There's also the addition of some value-adding components, such as that keyboard, which comes basically free as part of the package. You can check out more details about the X1S. Again, this is like a passive touchscreen tablet. It has a screen protector pre-installed by the company in our full written review, but this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.